Hello, Canucks fans. Welcome back to the episode of Canucks Conversation, brought to you by Bet365. It is a pivotal game day, as they all probably will be for the rest of the regular season for the Vancouver Canucks. Canucks versus Isles. Technical producer Jacob Lazar, what do you have to say for yourself? Montreal Canadiens just completely botched it last night. We're all rallying around the Habs and, oh yeah, they're going to get it done. They're going to halt the St. Louis Blues winning streak. Nope, St. Louis Blues pick up their 7th win. And Montreal hardly put up a fight. Remember the other day when Jacob was like, oh, don't you dare put the Montreal Canadiens in the same conversation as the Nashville Predators. More like, don't put the Nashville Predators in the same conversation as the Montreal Canadiens.
All I will say is that maybe we just need to look at the St. Louis Blues and say they're actually a good team who deserves to be in the playoffs.
Harmon?
They're beating everyone right now.
Harmon, thoughts? Are the St. Louis Blues good or the Habs bad?
Blues are just steamrolling them. I'll be honest. I think the Canadiens are a solid team that has defensive flaws, and those were kind of exposed against St. Louis, where the Blues defended really well, gave the Canadiens nothing off the rush. There was a lot of chip and chase from Montreal where they were like dumping it, couldn't recover pucks because St. Louis's blue line was moving the puck out really well. And then at the offensive end, they just sort of left Montembeault out to dry. I lean towards it more being a Blues thing.
All right, fair enough. Habs are also a good team, apparently. Yes, that's the news of the night, folks. St. Louis Blues win. And really, the Canucks are just back to, I don't want to say square one, but they're back where they were the other night. They have 2 games in hand on the St. Louis Blues, and they are 5 points back of the St. Louis Blues. If they beat the New York Islanders tonight, they will be 3 points back of the St. Louis Blues with 1 game in hand. So yes, they are back to exactly where they were ahead of Monday night's game against the New Jersey Devils. And obviously, if you're a Canucks fan, you are hoping for a similar fate against the New York Islanders as the Canucks found against the New Jersey Devils. Now, another thing that happened last night, the Calgary Flames are on a 4-game win streak as they knocked off their opponent. Who did they play last night? Why am I forgetting this? I watched
Kraken.
the game. Kraken, thank you. Believe it or not, I watched the game. I just couldn't remember who they were playing, but overtime win. That goal by Kadri was sick. Nazem Kadri, who Harmon said was going to score 4 goals all year. Nazem Kadri comes in overtime on a breakaway, gives the Flames their 4th win in a row. They are back. Man,
Credit to them, man. They don't die.
Yeah, they don't die, and we kept thinking the bottom's falling out. It just hasn't happened.
This is the thing, too. Even if I win the bet at this point where the Flames don't make the playoffs, I'm not going to cash in the Pirate Pack. I can't in good faith do it. I've been wrong about them. I thought they were going to fade. Originally, when we made the bet really early into the season, I figured they'd be done by the time the calendar flipped to January. As far as being in the playoff race, and especially once the Canucks beat them, Zary got suspended. They lost 2 or 3 games in a row. I was looking at their record since February 1st, and they were below 500. I was like, I don't know if they have it in them to keep this up. Backlund injury too, but man, credit to them. They just keep fighting. And I watched that whole game. Yeah, Wolf was incredible, but it's not just him at this point. They forecheck well. They generated a lot of shots. They're getting depth contributions, which they weren't for large chunks of this season. Like Adam Klapka scored in the first period, which was massive for them.
Does Quads even know who that is?
Klapka? No, I talk about Klapka all the time. He's one of my tall guys.
Because he's tall, yeah.
He's one of my tall guys.
I ran into him at a Subway restaurant in Kamloops a couple summers ago. And I didn't know who he was, but he was wearing Calgary Flames like team issued slides, and he was like 6'7". So I'm like, this must be a prospect. And I looked him up, and it was Adam Klapka.
I knew who Adam Klapka was very early because he fought Alex Canuck-Leipert in Abbotsford, and that was one of the sickest fights I've ever seen. Because for those that don't know, Canuck-Leipert's 5'11", I think 5'10", and he just held his own. Those are my favorite types of fights, honestly. Going down a quick memory lane here, I think my favorite fight of all time is Rick Rippon versus Hal Gill. If I had to pick a favorite fight of all time, and you might go with something different. Like there's a lot of good fights out there. Like Rick Tockett's had a handful where guys are just trading punches, and you're like, oh, this is sick. Those are cool fights. Don't get me wrong, but I love watching like a technical fight where a guy like Rick Rippon is like switching hands on Hal Gill and he's blocking and you don't see that kind of stuff in hockey fights. So that's probably my favorite hockey fight of all time. But Canuck Leipert versus Adam Klapka, look it up. That's another really good one. And I went a little off track here, just a little bit. But Harmon, someone in the chat, Sean Barber, said it looks like Minnesota is going to be the more catchable team at this point, given the remaining match against them and the state of their play and roster. We broke this down yesterday. What were they yesterday? Like 93% chance to make the playoffs. Last night, they lose 5-1 to the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm curious how this is updated and how it will be updated in the days that come, because they face the Washington Capitals next, then they face the New Jersey Devils, then they face the Devils again, and then they're going to do they're doing this New York trip where they face the Rangers, then they face the Islanders, then they've got Dallas again. From there, it gets a little easier, I guess. They've got the Sharks, then it's the Flames, Canucks, and Anaheim to close out their season. I know they had a really good chance yesterday, but are you buying into what I'm selling you when I say the Minnesota Wild might end up either being the wildcard 2 team or the team that falls out of it?
Yeah, I mean, momentum is certainly on the Blues side, and the Wild are banged up without Kaprizov, without Eriksson Ek. They also have Brock Faber, who, while he's been healthy, because they've had so many top 4 injuries this year, he's played such a massive workload that he's shown a lot of signs of fatigue. So, it's not just the guys that are out of the lineup, but a star like Faber, who they typically rely on to play in all situations, is looking tired, is looking worn down, and his underlying numbers have taken a significant hit. Yeah, I could see a scenario where the Blues overtake the Wild, but it's still going to be difficult for the Canucks to catch up to the Wild and actually knock them out. As far as a wild card 2 race, you're talking about a 7-point deficit with 1 game in hand. The Canucks only have 11 games left in the season. All Minnesota really needs to do is play 500 hockey, and they have a really strong chance of making it through. For the Canucks to catch Minnesota, the bottom would have to completely fall out. Which, yeah, the Wild have been struggling, but it's not hard to play 500 hockey in a league where you can force games into OT and get points that way too. So, yeah, I could see a scenario where Wild fall into the wild card two slot, but it's still going to be tough for the Canucks to chase Minnesota. And one thing I will say about the playoff race as a whole, how massive are the 2 points that the Canucks got against the Devils now that Calgary and St. Louis won last night? The Canucks would basically be out of it if they left that New Jersey game empty-handed.
We're not having any conversations right now. Do you know what we're talking? Well, we had Dave Hall on yesterday, but the conversations we're having right now are like, okay, so here's why you should still watch the show, and also why you should watch the Canucks down the end of the season. And we talked about some of those reasons yesterday with Jonathan Lekkerimaki, but those conversations stay off for a little bit longer because we've got competitive games right now. You've got the Canucks fighting for their lives, and as Hughes said it after that New Jersey game, fighting to save their season with 3 weeks left to go. We'll see how it goes. New York Islanders, Canucks tonight. We're going to get Jeff Patterson on in about 5 minutes time. Harmon, quickly, this game tonight, what are you expecting to see?
It's going to be fascinating to see, for me, how many penalties are called. And that's usually a strange way to start a conversation about a game. But when you look at the Islanders, they're a pretty solid 5-on-5 team. What's killed them is special teams. They have the worst power play in the NHL at 12.1%. And their PK is sitting around the low 70s range. Yeah, 72%, which is 30th in the NHL. If you just look at special teams as one facet of the game, Islanders are by far the worst team in the NHL. That's what really crushes them. So lately it's been interesting. It feels like there haven't been many power plays on both sides. So the officiating is actually going to be, I think, a bigger storyline in this game than it would be in most contests, because if it ends up being a game where there are, let's say, 3 or 4 penalties called on each side, 3 or 4 power play opportunities for each team, then that favors the Canucks, especially if they bump Lekkerimaki up to power play 1 and have their optimal top unit look against Denial's PK that can really struggle. And on the flip side, you got Denial's power play that can't score against a pretty elite Canucks PK. Whereas if it ends up being, 1 or 2 power plays on the other side, a matchup like that suits the Islanders. So that's right off the bat something that I'm going to be looking for. Goaltending, I mean, the Isles have picked up a couple wins here or there where they haven't really deserved to win, but Ilya Sorokin's just sort of kept them in it. Their top 6 forward group is pretty banged up right now. Or I should say thin. Partially banged up because Matt Barzal is out, but also because Brock Nelson got traded. They don't have a lot of weapons up front. So it's kind of evenly matched in that way, right? The Canucks don't have Elias Pettersson. They don't have Filipino. Against most opponents, there'd be a sharp disadvantage when comparing Vancouver's top 6 versus your opponent's top 6. That's not really the case against the Islanders. What they do have going for them lately is Noah Dobson, since coming back from injury, has started to play at a star level again. Through the first half, he was struggling. He wasn't putting up a lot of offense. His 2 underlying numbers weren't great, but since he's come back from injury, he's playing like a top 10, top 15 defenseman in the league again. And they're going to lean on him to really drive the bus.
I was looking at their center depth. I didn't realize how bad it was. Also reading Jeff's game day today over at Canucks Army. The Islanders don't score very much. Bo Horvat's leading them with 49 points this year. Obviously, they trade Brock Nelson, but still 49 points for Bo Horvat, and that is their leading scorer. They don't score much.
Yeah, not surprised. I mean, thin top 6 group, no Barzal. They're relying on Horvat to do a lot of the heavy lifting, and that's why, in terms of a matchup, it's not a bad one for the Canucks here. I think if they're sturdy defensively, and one thing I want to see from last game translate over, or last couple of games translate over, is it feels like the Canucks, despite some of the bodies they're missing up front, the Devils game, the Rangers game, they've actually been creating scoring chances at a pretty healthy clip, which we haven't been able to say many times this season. So if the Canucks can continue getting shots, getting chances, then I like the odds of them being competitive and holding their own in this one against the Islanders. These are 2 pretty mediocre teams right now, is the point I'm trying to make.
I think you're making it well. Another guy who has a lot of points to make. Do we call it Patterson's point? I think so. Jeff Patterson joins us, and he is brought to you by Pacific Toyota dealers, who want to tell you about the 100% electric Toyota BZ4X. An SUV packed with plenty of space, the BZ4X can handle any terrain and can take you from the city to the slopes. Plus, if you're driving a BZ4X, you get access to HOV lanes even if you're driving alone. When you choose the BZ4X, you can get $6,500 in rebates and incentives, and now you can finance the 2025 BZ4X from 3.29% APR for 36 months. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. Let's bring him in. Jeff Patterson joins us now. Jeff, how's it going?
Good. In a perfect world, the Canucks are going to jump out to like a 3-1 lead in the third period. Again, perfect world stuff. I get it. But a 3-1 lead so that Patrick Roy pulls his goalie with 12 minutes to go. That's what I really want to see from this hockey game tonight, is Patrick Roy doing Patrick Roy things. And, hey, he's a little unconventional behind the bench there, but he's got his Islanders for all the flaws, and you guys laid them out there. They're a point out of the playoffs, and they got hosed the other night. I don't know if people saw what happened while the Canucks were busy beating Jersey in the shootout. Islanders had a 3-1 lead on Columbus, let it get away, and with 10 seconds to go, Kyle Palmieri looked like he had scored, thought he had scored. They waved it off, they reviewed it, and didn't count, and then Islanders end up losing in a shootout. So both these teams coming off shootouts on Monday. Every point matters. I don't know. The Islanders got hosed. I don't know if you guys saw it the same way, but goaltending interference is such a crapshoot. I get that. And I never think that I'm going to agree with the ultimate call on the ice. That didn't look like goaltender interference to me. And so Islanders probably feel they have a little chip on their shoulder coming into this one because they need every point. They got to get above the playoff bar in the East. And, of course, the Canucks, they'll do what they can here, but they look at the out-of-town scoreboard and guess what? St. Louis is playing Nashville again tomorrow. Third time in 6 games. Like, just freebies. It's like Halloween for the Blues. They're just giving out points to the St. Louis Blues. So that's the challenge. Canucks have to hold their own and help themselves because they're not likely to get a lot of help on the out-of-town scoreboard.
They helped themselves on Monday. What did you like in that game against the Devils?
their stick-to-itiveness, if that's the word it is on this show. The fact that these guys grind to the end, as understaffed and undermanned as they are, like there is no quit in them. Are they a flawed bunch? Sure. Is it still a massive uphill climb to make the playoffs? Absolutely. But they could roll over and feel sorry for themselves and just think, oh, well, no Paterson, no Höglander, there's no chance here. You got Quinn Hughes, you got a chance. And so I like the fact that they stuck with it. Obviously, Jonathan Lekkerimaki was the storyline there. I like the passing from two defensemen that I do not expect to be playmakers, but from similar spots on the ice, to see Marcus Paterson find Suter in front of the net, and then Derek Forbort out there just saucing passes in the third period when they're down and need offense. How about that? So again, like I think they have to look at it as the next man up and an opportunity. And so, yeah, to be able to chip away here and hang tough with these teams and ultimately find a way to win the other night with four guys that have spent the bulk of their season down in Abbotsford, four in the forward group, and then if DPD gets back in the lineup, there's another guy that spent most of the year down in the minors. Like they are doing it ridiculously short-staffed right now, but looks like they're going to play to the end here and make other teams eliminate them essentially. So can they keep it up? Can they make this happen on a nightly basis? They're playing with fire to do it twice in the first three games of this road trip to get buzzer beaters essentially to force overtime. But hey, good on them, and we'll see where this continues to go. And I'm just like, look, a week from now, these games may mean absolutely nothing, right? Like the end could come for the Vancouver Canucks well before game 82. And so I really am trying to be invested in each and every one of these remaining games right now, and because we know that it's going to be a long off season if they don't qualify for the playoffs. So let's try to enjoy these games, even if they're not pretty on the ice. This is all we got to work with right now. So let's see what happens tonight.
What did you make of Pia Suter's performance in that de facto 1C role? Scores, I believe, had another assist. Maybe the goal was originally credited to him, but kept flip-flopping back and forth. And big picture, how big of a priority should it be for the Canucks to try and extend him? Or do you view him as this guy's having a career season, likely pricing himself out of the market, and you maybe don't want to be the team that pays him that hefty contract? All
right, let me just hop up on my little soapbox here. Been in this business for a while now. One of my great pet peeves, and it happened again on Monday, we do rink wide right after the final buzzer. We can only work with the material that we have been given by the two teams in the NHL. So you do a post-game podcast believing that Pia Suter has scored twice and it's incredible stuff. And then, of course, right after we finish, the league puts out a correction. Oh, no, it's not Pia Suter's goal. It's Connor Garland's. And then anybody listening to the podcast the next day, like, you idiots. Like, Suter didn't score twice. What are you talking about? So, that was for the last, I've been sort of foaming at the mouth here for the last 48 hours because that kind of stuff just drives me nuts. But look, Pia Suter's been terrific for them. And, is he a 25-goal scorer? No, in the same vein that Brock's not a 40-goal scorer. He got there last year. Like, whether he signs here with the Canucks or somewhere else, I'm still going to look at Pia Suter as a 15-goal guy that gives you a lot in a lot of areas. This is just, great timing for him to, in a platform year, to do what he has done. But I don't think all of a sudden Pia Suter is now looked at moving forward as he, nears 30 years of age that, this guy's added, this ability to pump 25 past NHL goaltenders on the regular. I don't think that's who he is. I think he's taken advantage of the situations that have been there. We know the versatility, the flexibility. I still don't know that he's getting enough credit for his role in the penalty kill that has ascended through the ranks here all season long. So we've all seen it since the day he arrived here. Really smart player, positionally sound, reads the play, anticipates, all those types of things that have allowed him to be productive as well. So he's in a tough spot right now being asked to be a 1C, but he played a career high over 23 minutes the other night, a couple of minutes of overtime, situations that you're not used to seeing him, but there's a floor with him that he's not going to disappoint. Like, he's going to give you everything he can. He may not rise above every single night, but he's just a reliable player that Rick Tocchet continues to rave about, called him basically like an assistant coach. I could absolutely see a coaching career for Pia Suter after his playing days are done. So, where does this all lead in terms of a contract? Cap's going up. He's going to cash in, and good on him. And I think, again, I think that there's a baseline there and where he is on the age curve that, if they went something like 4x4 with Suter, that wouldn't outrage me. I think he's earned a raise. He's going to get a raise, whether it's from the Canucks or elsewhere. And then it's a question of, how much do they value him and how much do they fear letting him walk and then trying to go and find another Suter at a lower price point. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm hoping that they find a way to re-sign him because I think he's a valuable piece now and can be in the years to come.
I always come back to this idea of finding the next Suter or finding the next, they did the whole finding the next Dakota Joshua. That was Kiefer Sherwood. And then they re-signed Dakota Joshua, but it was obvious Kiefer Sherwood was the guy they looked at as like an undervalued player that could find another gear, and he's found that gear. Suter, let's not forget, was a really late off-season signing. I was at the Vancouver Zoo the day that it happened. I don't go to the zoo until late August, Jeff. Could you find another Suter, or do you think the cap going up kind of makes it so that those guys are going to find what they're looking for on July 1?
Well, hang on a second here, because I've been to the zoo. There's not a lot of shade at the Greater Vancouver Zoo, and you make a habit of going in August, middle of the summer.
It was my first time going. I'd never been to a zoo, any zoo. I'd never been to a zoo. All I'd done is the Vancouver Aquarium, and I went to the zoo for the first time. I might make it a thing every 2 or 3 years. I didn't love it there, but
little known fact, I consider myself a bit of a zoo expert, and people might be surprised to hear that, but certainly have been to the San Diego Zoo, and if you've never been to that's the zoo that you got to get to. But I have been to zoos through Europe. I have been to the Prague Zoo. I have been. Anyways, we're getting off topic.
I didn't even know Vancouver had a zoo.
No, it does. It's in Aldergrove.
The Greater Vancouver Zoo. It's a little bit of a road trip for you, Harm, but yeah, someday get Dave to take you.
Yeah,
you guys can go talk to the giraffes.
Canucks
giraffes about the 2025 draft class.
Yeah,
or
Canucks Convo live from the Greater Vancouver.
I like it. That's got some potential there.
And Jeff will be there.
What were we talking about? I can't even
finding
remember
the next Suter and your favorite
at
zoo
the
animal.
zoo. You're not going to find the next Suter at the zoo. It's one of those things that's total GM speak, right? It's always their job is to find the next guy to replace the guy they've already got. Again, if you looked at Suter in a group of 100 NHLers, he's not going to stand out physically. You get them to skate. He's not going to be the fastest guy, but how does he rise above? How does he succeed on his smarts and his intelligence? And so, those are some of those things that are hard to measure, but once you've got a player like that and one that's established this bond of trust with the head coach, if Rick Tocchet's back, I think Rick Tocchet would probably love to have Suter locked up and to be here for the next bunch of years. So, instead of looking for the next one, maybe they should deal with what they've got bird in hand and all that kind of stuff. And obviously you want guys in your system that at some point can work their way and try to push from below. But I don't think they've got anybody really that profiles doing the things in all areas of the game that Suter does. So, I think they should be pretty fortunate to have him. Again, it's going to cost them. That's just the nature of the business. He's had a terrific year as a pending UFA, and so he's due a raise, and he's going to get it. I don't think there's any doubt of that. So it's really going to be interesting to see ultimately where the dollars come in and the term and whether it's here in Vancouver or elsewhere.
And favorite zoo animal?
Oh, I guess I got to go elephant. I'm an elephant guy. Yeah.
I like the giraffes a lot. Mm-hmm. And they had these bears that they rescued, 3 bear cubs that I guess their mom or something got hit by a car. I remember reading the story and it was like, whoa, thank God they saved these bears. And they were just having so much fun. Let's be honest, a lot of the animals look a little depressed, which is why I didn't love the zoo. I'm not going to lie. But these bears were having the time of their life. They had this big open field and they were siblings and they were chasing each other. That made my day. I'm going bear. I really like the bears at the Vancouver Zoo. Harm? You can ask a question, or you can tell us your favorite zoo animal.
I've never been to the zoo, so I can't give you my favorite animal yet.
There you go. Okay, we'll change that.
I'll get back to you next year.
Yeah.
With Thatcher Demko and Kevin Langton, the goaltending situation down the stretch, how would you manage it, JPAT? Because on one hand, Demko was pretty solid last game, but he's ramping back up, and you don't know where exactly he's at in terms of his health, and you don't want there to be re-injury risk. But also in Kevin Langton, it seems like he's been a bit fatigued lately from the excess workload that he's taken on, and his form has sort of dipped. How would you manage the workload between Demko and Langdon down the stretch here?
Yeah, this is another one of those situations when the Canucks get out on the road and there aren't many eyeballs on them. Like there was a suggestion that Kevin Lankinen wasn't just not feeling well against the Rangers, but maybe dinged up a little bit here. And, you can understand that if that's the case. It started 10 of 11 before Thatcher Demko got back into the net there on Monday. So, I don't know exactly where they are with Lankinen. I understand he was on the ice this morning for the morning skate, so we'll see if he backs up. I think it was the right thing to do the other night to give him an entire night off, but maybe he had to have a night off because he wasn't physically able to suit up. So was impressed with Demko. It wasn't spectacular. Didn't have to be until overtime. That save that he made on Paul Cotter. And guys, how different would the conversation have been in this marketplace, do you think, the other day if Cotter had scored there? Like he blows past Brock Besser in the neutral zone to make that a 2-on-1. And it was all I could think about was, man, if he scores there, it's not, the Canucks lost in overtime again. It's like, foot speed, Brock Besser's foot speed, but I think Brock was able to get his stick in on the back check a little bit, maybe prevented Cotter from getting the shot off that he wanted, but Demko there to make the save. So, there's going to be this urge, I think, to push Demko, and we know that that's a dangerous game to play, obviously, with the injuries that he's had, not just this year, but throughout his career. But I thought he looked good. And the fact that he got through the game unscathed, he probably didn't need overtime and a shootout in his return to game action for the first time in 6 weeks. But, the game called for it, and he was there right down to the final shooter. So 22 saves in regulation and overtime, and then 3 more in the shootout. I thought it looked technically sound.
Yep.
And so, if he had to knock off a little rust, then I would expect that he should be even better tonight. And for the things that you talked about just before I joined you with, the Islanders don't score a lot. The Canucks don't score a lot generally. And you've got 2 goaltenders that certainly can be up to the challenge. I'd take the under here. Like I'm expecting a relatively low scoring game. I think all Canuck games are 1-1 after 40 minutes. I think that's just the rule. And then the third period goes nuts. Like at least that's kind of been the case on this road trip. The first 3 games, it's been that way. So we'll see if that holds again here tonight. But the Canucks have to be mindful of the workload with Demko. I mean, they just do. And I think Demko has to sort of advocate as well. As much as he wants to play, he can't play them all. He shouldn't play them all. Lankinen has earned his right to play these meaningful games as well, as long as he's healthy. So, is it as simple as a rotation? Probably not. But I do wonder in the short term here if it is win and you're in kind of thing, to a point, though. Because, again, after being off 6 weeks, I don't know that it's in anybody's best interest to run Thatcher Demko, 4, 5, 6 in a row. And that's not great for Lankinen either to sit there. So, yeah, I don't have the answer necessarily, but I think it'll be something closer to a rotation with 11 games to go. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if from this point forward at the end of the year, if we look back, a 6-5 split for one of them, maybe 7-4, if Demko really does get on a heater here and they just feel they can't get away from him to keep their playoff hopes alive. So, we'll see. But as long as both guys are healthy, then they certainly they should, there should be no shortage of goaltending for the Vancouver Canucks.
Jeff, final one for me. Where do you stand on the stick twirl and Jonathan Lekkermaki's game as a whole on Monday night?
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised. It's a pretty ballsy move from a 20-year-old that's never taken part in an NHL shootout. But damn, what a shot. Like, undeniable. And we all know that, right? Like, we know that is one of the things that has separated him from the pack is his ability to fire pucks. And I was kind of like Rick Tocchet, though. He's done shootouts. He's grown up with shootouts, whether it's at lower levels or now in the NHL. So it wasn't surprising that one-on-one, he beats a goaltender cleanly. But I liked the goal that he scored in regulation. It was a big goal for them. It was a big goal for him. The anticipation to find that spot on the ice and just knowing that Derek Forbort was going to, because of course Derek Forbort's going to find you in the slot. As long as you make yourself presentable, Derek Forbort's going to get you that puck, and that's what happened there. But no mistake. And I was a little surprised at Jacob Markstrom's reaction, quite frankly. Like, we know that Markey runs hot, and we also know that the Devils have been scuffling along a little bit. I didn't realize, though, until, doing a little homework ahead of that Devils game, just how bad it's been for Jacob Markstrom since he returned from his knee injury. like 1 win in 7 starts now, I think. So I think that was sort of boiling over as well, is that, he just can't deliver wins right now, and they're getting closer to the playoffs, and they're going to be a playoff team. But, is there a guarantee that Jacob Markstrom's going to be the starter for the Devils in the playoffs with Jake Allen breathing down his neck there, a qualified veteran backup? And so, I think Markey's probably feeling a little bit of heat and needed a release, and man, that stick didn't stand a chance. So I want to see more of Lekkerimaki, and that is the upside, I guess, to the injuries here, is that they have no choice but to have him in the lineup. But if he's going to be in there, then play him more than 10 minutes. Again, I think he's earned that. And so that's one of the things I'm going to be monitoring in this game tonight, is his usage, both at 5-on-5 and on the power play. And just quickly on the Islanders' penalty kill, and Harm, you pointed out, and you're not wrong, where they sit in the overall standings, but I don't know if you guys saw, somebody asked Patrick Waugh about it a week ago, and in typical Patrick Waugh fashion, he snapped and said, I don't want to hear anything more about our penalty kill. To his point, it was disastrous up until Christmas, but since January 1st, Islanders are 8th in the NHL. Like, they have flipped a switch, and for some reason, I think goaltending is probably, your last line of defense there. But in 2025, their penalty killing has actually been top 10 in the NHL, but it shows you how bad it was prior to Christmas that it remains sitting 30th in the league with, 10 games left on their schedule. So it's been better, but it's still not, perfect. So maybe an opportunity. If you're right, if there are penalties, we'll see if the Canucks can capitalize.
Jeff, good stuff as always. Thanks so much for taking the time today, and we will chat with you next week.
See you guys at the zoo.
There he is, Jeff Patterson, noted zoo expert, who's going to join us for an episode of Canucks Convo from the Greater Vancouver Zoo. Jacob, book a zookeeper.
What?
Zookeeper, next guest on Canucks Convo. That's what we want. Callie Canuck left a good comment. Just curious, with all the zoo talk, do the Canucks have a game tonight, perhaps against their former captain? Yes, they do. They do. But somehow zoos got brought up, and I didn't know that Jeff was a zoo expert, that he knew zoos so well. That's great. That's really good. Good resource to have on Canucks Convo. We got.
I'm not going to the zoo unless I see a chaos giraffe.
Well, you'll see giraffes. They don't do much though. Although, you know what's really cool? The giraffe house, like the structure that holds the giraffe, it's just really high. Like, it's really, really high up. It's funny. It's very funny because they got to fit that neck. I guess you understood that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Let's go to anyone else, which is brought to you by our friends over at Greta, a great spot for all games, home and away. Conveniently located just minutes from the arena. Make Greta your pre-post or main spot to chill next time you're downtown with drinks, the iconic street food menu, and of course the arcade games. Head on down to Greta today. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. Greta Bar YVR. Jacob, we got an email. Are we allowed to announce the watch party on April 10th yet?
It's tomorrow. We do the full announcement tomorrow.
All right. Full announcement coming tomorrow.
It said that 3 times in the email.
Full announcement coming tomorrow for a watch party happening on April 10th. We'll get you some info on tickets and all that fun stuff. It's coming later. Joshua Phillip in the chat. Quad's obsession with tall hockey players now makes sense. He's a giraffe enthusiast. I did like the giraffes. The giraffes are pretty cool animals. I like giraffes. Someone said our favorite animal should have been orcas. There's no orcas at the zoo. They're at the.
How do they get giraffes?
Oh,
here?
That is a great question. Jacob?
I'm not a zoo expert. I don't know.
How do zoos import giraffes?
All I know about zoo stuff is that any zoo that has pandas have to rent the pandas from the government of China, because China owns every panda on Earth. And if like a zoo wants pandas, they have to broker a deal with the government of China, and any like baby pandas that get born are still property of China.
Oh wow.
And they can recall them at any time they want. It's very interesting stuff.
You know how much it costs to buy a giraffe? That's what I came up to. To do the whole process of like you purchase and transport the giraffe, and you have to go through all these regulations saying like you're going to take care of the giraffe. Like, you can't just buy a giraffe and they look the other way. You need to like show where it's going to live. It needs to have good conditions, all that. The cost range from $45,000 to $250,000.
Yeah, sounds about right. I wouldn't expect a giraffe to be cheap to. And
there's a health testing after transport. Then they have to quarantine to make sure there's no disease spreading. Wow, there's a lot of regulations with giraffes. But what I'm asking, oh, wow. Specialized transport crates are used to ensure the giraffe's comfort and safety during the flight. Do giraffes lie down? Like, that's the real question, because there's no plane that's that high.
We gotta get a giraffe expert on.
Yeah, get Jacob, book a zookeeper. Oh, Linda Vigor in the chat. I've never seen her comment before, but thanks for listening to the show. She said, hockey, perhaps? That's a throwback comment. That reminds me of the good old days when we would always talk non-hockey stuff on this show. Let's go to the hockey, though. Harm, I'm curious about this Islanders team for the reason of goaltending. And Thatcher Demko has been confirmed as the Canucks starter tonight. Do you look at tonight as a game where it's okay, two teams that aren't really all that great at scoring? It's going to come down to which elite level goaltender is better tonight. Like, that's how I'm starting to look at this game.
To some extent. I do think, though, a lot of it will hinge on whether the Canucks can keep up the positive offensive momentum that they've had the last couple of games. They've controlled play well, despite being relatively undermanned. If they are able to create chances in bulk, then I think that sets them up or significantly increases their odds of winning compared to if they're just reliant on Quinn Hughes, where there's nothing happening in non-Hughes minutes, which has been an issue at some points this season. And that's why it was really encouraging to see Marcus Paterson being more proactive offensively, finding a way to chip in. Derek Forbert somehow ending up behind the goal line, setting up that Lekkerimaki goal. Mancini and Myers at times were aggressive skating up the ice and participating offensively. It seems like with the forwards out, the Canucks D are making more of a push to try and chip in offensively, which they've been able to do without sacrificing their defensive solidity. So that's a big thing that I'm going to be watching for outside of just the goaltending, because we know the goaltending matchup is going to matter. Can that momentum from the defense contributing to chance creation continue? Because that increases their odds, as opposed to if there's a scenario where Quinn is the only engine for this team offensively, then it could be an easy night for Sorokin, and you may end up in a situation where he doesn't even have to do a whole lot.
Really good point. Really good point. Someone in the chat, where did it go? Excuse me. This one from Gunzilla97 said, I'm not sure if you guys have answered this, but if the Canucks trade for Bo Horvat, who would you trade, and how much do the Islanders need to retain on the deal to make this work? I think it's a good talking point, because I'm not going to lie to you, Harm. That free agent class of centers is looking pretty damn bleak, and I've at least had the thought of a Bo Horvat reunion, and that his cap hit, although I didn't want them to sign it at the time, his cap hit in the grand scheme of things, cap going up, doesn't look all that bad, does it? He's someone you know. We know he fits in this market. We know this market liked him. I know that better than Vancouver comment is still rubbing some people the wrong way, but I've at least thought about a Bo Horvat reunion. Am I crazy?
You're not crazy, but I don't know if it makes sense.
Like logistically speaking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, unless the Islanders say we're blowing this up, we're rebuilding, which
Lou's not going to do.
But
he might. No one ever really knows what Lou Lamoriello is doing.
Lou Lamoriello is the most conservative general manager out there. Right? He's the classic, if you have time, use it. It took him forever to decide just to move Brock Nelson in the first place, which should have been a pretty straightforward decision that, hey, even if you get into the playoffs, you're not doing any damage. Brock Nelson would get you a haul because of the lack of high-end centers. It should have been a no-brainer for the Isles to deal him the entire time, and nobody around the league knew for the longest time if Lou Lamoriello was going to trade away an aging pending UFA off his non-contending team for a haul. Like, that's how conservative he is as a general manager. That's how sort of patient he is. So I wouldn't be holding my breath that he's going to be really willing to shop Bo. Isles already have such a shortage of high-end forwards. That's why they traded for Horvat in the first place. Only scenario where he's available is if the Islanders say, we're blowing this up, and for that to happen, you'd probably be looking at some sort of major hockey operations turnover in the front office.
So that has to happen first. What route do you think the Canucks are going to go to address their center depth? That was another question from a couple of people actually asked about addressing the center depth in the offseason. But like, if you had to give an answer, what route are they going to go to address this? Because it doesn't look like there's anyone in free agency. There's a couple names, but guess what? A bunch of other teams are going to be trying to sign them. So if you missed out on that, like, what's your plan? Who is your Anthony Santander?
Who?
Jays missed out on Juan Soto this offseason. They missed out on Ohtani, but they missed out on Soto this offseason. They pivoted and got Anthony Santander. Their plan B. Who is the Canucks' plan B?
It's so early. I wish I had an answer for you. A couple of them, like Josh Norris and Dylan Cousins, already got shipped out.
Yeah.
I mean, Marco Rossi could be available, but I don't know how appealing he'd be to Canucks management because he isn't a big body. He's an undersized guy. I imagine if Sam Bennett is available that they'll try and make a run for him in free agency. But right now, the trade market looks kind of thin, right? Even a name like Braden Shen, who we thought might be available, all of a sudden Blues are red hot. Shen's turned it around. It'd be shocking if he's available. Is there a scenario where Ryan O'Reilly shakes loose? But even then, O'Reilly's getting up there in age. He can play second line center minutes, but is he a high-end name at this stage in his career? I don't love his foot speed. I don't love the fit there, right? But that's like, I'm just throwing names out there as far as like top 6 centers who might be available. I haven't done a full look around the league, but I'll be honest, the options aren't that appealing.
Calcio Storico said this in the chat. He said, the lack of asset acquisition on pending UFAs this season really makes it hard to imagine the Canucks making a big move for a center. Can I give you a prediction?
Yeah.
Canucks re-signed both Besser and Suter.
Okay. That's bold.
I think it is, right? But I'm looking around. They got no assets for either of those guys. So you can't go trade for, well, you could, but you'd rather not, and you didn't go get assets for those guys. All you have to show for your work at the deadline is a 3rd-round pick for Carson Soucy, which is going to help. It's absolutely going to help. But the fact that that's all they did at the deadline, and whether you, no matter what you believe they could have gotten, at least a 2nd-round pick for Brock Besser and at least a 3rd or a 2nd, at least a 3rd, let's be conservative, for Pius Suter, like those are assets that could help you go make a trade and go get a guy that you need. So to lose both of those guys and to see a pretty thin UFA market where, yeah, you go after Sam Bennett, but guess what? A lot of teams are going to go after Sam Bennett. And if you lose out on Sam Bennett, then what do? You look at the trade market. We went over yesterday how they don't have many assets that they can use for an offer sheet. They're basically in one range of the offer sheet range. So their only option, it would seem, is go try to sign someone. But if you miss out, you're going to have to trade for someone. And then at that point, you don't have a ton of assets that you can flip in a trade, you would think.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy.
So I think they re-sign both, is what I'm saying.
Okay. If there's a scenario where Mason McTavish, who's an RFA, the Ducks already have, plenty of center options. Especially with Leo Carlson sort of being their franchise guy. I think it's a long shot that he's available, but he's sort of stagnated this year, hasn't taken the big step that I think a lot of people in that market were hoping for. I'd be making that call if I'm the Canucks. Again, no idea if the Ducks have any interest in moving him at all. If I was the Ducks, I wouldn't be interested in moving Mason McTavish.
No, I wouldn't either. I love Mason McTavish.
But you make that call if you're the Canucks. You have to at least see if they'd be willing to listen.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Jacob has a couple things for us. Jacob, what's this first one? The Marchand Luongo thing? Oh, yeah. I sent this to Jacob. Did you see this? Roberto Luongo at practice, geared up. He's wearing his old pads, the ones he got for the All-Star game, of course, and it was in Florida, the ones that have the Canucks logo and the Panthers mixed in there. He's wearing his gear. He's wearing a Panthers practice jersey. And who is he talking to? Brad Marchand of the Florida Panthers, of course. What do you think they're talking about, Harm?
Well, I just want to know what the chirps would be like between them, right? Like the friendly banter, because you got two guys who are all-time greats at chirping. Can you imagine listening in on that conversation, that banter back and forth? Especially Luongo with the self-deprecating humor too, because Marchand's kind of got the leg up because of the 2011 final and cup win.
Kinda.
But Luke can sort of lean into the self-deprecating humor and kind of level the playing field.
Yeah. People don't like that photo. Take it off, Jacob. Giant baby. Hit the giant baby.
I mean, Marchand, you're right, Harm. They're gonna chirp at each other, but technically Luongo's his boss now, so you know, at least he's got that over him. Doesn't have a cup ring.
Strike me as a serious boss.
Oh,
though.
not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, I don't think Luongo's disciplining anyone if they chirp him a little too much. It doesn't seem like the type. Okay. Other thing that happened. I asked Jake to pull this up, and he's got the fastest fingers in the West, so he pulled it up. This goalie interference the other night that Jeff was talking about. Elvis Merzlikins pushes Kyle Palmieri, and this is called goalie interference. Did you see this? I didn't see this.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
He
I
pushes
got
him.
hosed.
He pushes him. Like, okay, contact with the skate there, but then he pushes him. You were the one that decided to push him.
And Palmieri wasn't even in the crease.
Yeah,
He was on the edge of the crease. He was not in the blue paint at all.
that's a crazy call, honestly. And for those that are on the podcast, you can go find it. We used it from Drew Livingstone posted it. Gino Hard posted it on Twitter as well. Honestly, if you just search Islanders goal interference on Google, I'm sure it will pop up. That is really, really bad. That shouldn't be goalie interference. That's awful. That's like the type of call that makes it get added to the next time the GMs all meet, get added to the agenda, or the CBA. Like, this needs to get addressed. This needs to get fixed. We need to figure something out here because this is just weird. You can't have it.
Well, what are you going to do?
What do you mean? What are you going
There's
to
just
do?
no consistent standard.
Yes, you
like-
have to set a consistent standard.
I know, but we've had these conversations for a long time. I don't know that this is getting fixed anytime soon. I agree with you. That was a Bush League call. But goalie interference has been this gray area for so long.
That's true. You just gotta you have to hammer it out. I don't know what it looks like. Like, I don't know if they say if you contact the goalie if you contact a goalie skate and the puck goes in within the next 3 seconds of game time, then it's goalie interference, because that's what just happened there. Like, let's be honest, that's what happened there. He connects with the skate, goes out, tips the puck, and they say, "Yep, goal interference." If that's your standard, then fine, that's your standard. But have a standard, right? And I don't think that should be the standard, that the goalie has a grace period if contact is made or anything like that. I don't think that should be the standard, but I'm saying you have to have it. And they did talk about it at the last GM meeting. They did. Like, that's the thing. I'm just saying now it gets added to the agenda again, and now it might be on the agenda for the CBA.
Well, that's the thing. It's just they've talked about this before. That's why I don't have a whole lot of faith and confidence in the league figuring this out, even though they really need to.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this as someone who played goalie myself, which you would think I would err on the side of the goalies, but I always find it weird how the crease in the NHL just seems so arbitrary these days. Goalies oftentimes play on the edge of it or outside of it even sometimes, but like something here, that contact and the push happened outside the crease. So what's the point in having the crease then if it's not being used for anything or any rules or in the enforcement of any rules? Like, you could eliminate the crease from the NHL, and would the enforcement of goalie interference change at all from where it currently is? Probably not, which then begs the question, what's the point in having a crease if you're not using it to enforce a goalie interference rule? I'm with you guys. They need to figure it out. But like, is it as simple as like the double IHF rule where like if a player goes into the crease without the puck being there, then like there's no goal? Like, is it that simple, or do they have to come up with some other solution?
It's going to be really interesting. But everybody in our chat agrees that was not goalie interference. And Jacob, you brought up the idea that, you're an ex-goalie. Wonder what Patrick Waugh said about that post-game. I haven't seen it. I don't know anything about it. But I'm pretty sure Patrick Waugh, the biggest ex-goalie of all time.
Patrick Waugh used that shove at the beginning of that there. Waugh used to do that in his sleep. He'd throw punches with his blocker at the backs of guys' necks routinely and get away with it. So... And he certainly was not getting the benefit of goalie interference calls after punching someone in the back of the neck. So I'm sure he had a lot to say.
Speaking of aggressive goaltenders, have you noticed over the last few games how on edge Igor Shesterkin has been all the time. Like anytime a player gets near him, I don't know if he's just mad that the Rangers suck defensively and he wants to take it out on somebody that he's facing grade A chances all night. But when I watched the Calgary game over a week ago, third period, Flames players not even in the crease, but just kind of skating by. Shesterkin gave him a shove. And we saw in the Canucks game too, a couple times he was taking whacks. And then at one point when he was actually called for the penalty, just outright kind of tackling Sherwood, taking him down. I don't know what's going on with Igor Shesterkin, but I just find that super interesting over the last few games, how he's kind of become unhinged.
Absolutely. It's something to watch. And I think you're right. I think it does come down to he's pissed off at what's going on in front of him. And why wouldn't he be? Like, those guys are hanging him up to dry.
Another awful performance by the team, wasting another great Shesterkin start.
Yep.
Last night too.
Anybody else see JC Miller bumped off power play 1?
Yeah.
Starting early out there. It's starting early. They didn't starting early. Anyways, Patrick Waugh, his post-game quote. Here it is. Paul Murray was out of the crease and he tipped it in. I think their goalie pushed him away at the same time. So that's how I see it. If Toronto's afraid to overturn calls made by the referee, then we don't need Toronto.
Paul Mary's quote was great too.
Yeah, I think it was expletive, embarrassing. Couldn't disagree more with the call. Absolutely. Yeah. Waugh continued, I don't think the rule is very clear for anyone. If it was clear, we would not have challenged. Are you telling me the Slavkovsky goal, where the Islanders lost a challenge on Thursday, was not worse than what we saw tonight? Yeah, that is, yeah, I expected that. That's just not goalie interference. It's not. That's brutal. That's brutal. Anything else that you wanted to get to, Harm?
Nope.
All right, let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day. Did I win last night? What did I pick?
Let's
don't remember
check the scores. I don't remember what you picked.
because you Harm wouldn't let you bet on the Habs, and that was the smart decision.
You made that bold call. Yeah, you took the Rangers yesterday.
No.
And we told you this.
Yeah.
Oh, I did.
Seem like
I did.
A great
Okay,
idea.
I did. You're right. I did. All right, what's up tonight? The Edmonton Oilers don't have Draisaitl or McDavid. Okay, moving on. Ooh. I gotta eventually pick a winner, right? I can't just keep going for underdogs. Okay. They are the underdogs, but I'm gonna go for it anyway. The Boston Bruins are the underdogs facing the Anaheim Ducks tonight. They're on the road. I'm taking Bruins money line. You can get that at plus 115 odds over on Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win is a barn burner. Every face-off, hat trick, power play, shot on goal, penalty shot, and every suspenseful minute in between is amazing. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365, an official partner of the NHL. Download the Bet365 app and use the code NATION to get in on the game. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. All right, the last hockey bet of the season, as Jacob just pointed out, because tomorrow is opening day, and I cannot wait. I am so excited for baseball season to start. But Canucks, Islanders tonight. We'll be back tomorrow to break it all down. For my co-host Harmon Dial and our technical producer Jacob Lazar, our thanks again to Jeff Patterson for joining us on today's show, and for you, the listener, for checking us out. Thanks so much for the episode of Canucks Conversation.
Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.